Here's what we're making today, ladies and gentlemen. Beautiful batch of tamales. This is beef tamales. Now, let me show you how they're done. Beef. This is one of 3 roasts that I bought for this. Chilies. This one is guajillo. Delicious chili. Makes a beautiful red sauce. It's one of 5 chilies we're going to be using. Corn husks, you're going to need some of those. And you're going to need a type of flour called masa harina. Today I'm going to show you how to make beef tamales. Ladies and gentlemen, tamale making it's a process, and it involves several different steps. Okay, and I'm going to take you step by step through this whole thing. Now, what you're watching here, this is the tutorial for beef tamales. If you're a really good cook, if you're a really good chef, you're probably not going to need this tutorial. Okay, if you've got all of the experience and you've made tamales before, the previous episode to this one is my recipe version. It's just the recipe. It doesn't really contain all of the detail that this one's going to contain. This is going to teach you differences in chilies, differences in the way chilies are named. You're going to find out that some chilies have one name when they're fresh and another name when they're dry, and I'm going to show you what those are. I'm also going to be kind of opening the door for you a little bit in understanding how tamales are brought together. And this is a really cool dish if you've never made it before. We're going to be doing a filling. It's a beef filling, and that beef filling is going to be flavored with this wonderful chili sauce. We're going to be making a special dough out of a corn flour that's called masa harina. Masa harina is where they take hominy and grind it to a flour after they've dried it. Also, the sauce that flavors the masa harina, the flour, that dough that we're going to make, we use this sauce to flavor the meat. And so, working with the chilies, that's where our sauce comes from. There's some other spices there too. We'll get into that in a little bit. Tamales are done with any kind of meat you can imagine. Chicken, pork, beef. Sometimes they're just done with vegetables or just cheese. Sometimes refried beans. You can tamale almost anything. It's just up to you. But today it's going to be about beef tamales. And I decided to do this because, hey, we're coming up on the holidays. We need something fresh and new for Christmas this year. And frankly, beef tamales, what the heck? That's a cool idea right there. So instead of pork tamales this year, we're going beef. It's going to be delicious. And ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to it. So let's get in the kitchen. Today's steps are going to be cooking up the meat and preparing a chili paste. It's not a hard thing to do, but lots of steps, okay? So the reason I do this over a 2-day period, and so you'll know in advance, I want to cook my meat. It takes a long time, okay? So it's a slow cook. We're braising. And then once the meat is literally falling apart, we bring it down in temperature to room temperature. Then we either separate the meat from the liquids, or we take the whole thing and just refrigerate all of it. Either way, we refrigerate all that we've cooked with. We save all of the juices. And then once it's cold enough, we can then separate the solid fats, which is the tallow, from the gelatin, which will be underneath it, and juices from that beautiful beef roast. So let's get in there and get it started. Come on. Now folks, this is day 1, and these are the ingredients for day 1. I'm starting with 8 pounds of beef chuck. I couldn't find a single cut, so what I did is just buy these nice 2-inch thick roasts. This is Black Angus, and it is a choice grade. That's something I was looking for, because I want the extra fat content. Lots of fat equals, number 1, good flavor, number 2, the right amount of fat to work our recipe with, which is something we need. On the chilies, 1 pound of Chilaka chilies to that, perfect. I want to talk to you about chilies here, and we've got several different ones that we're going to use. So you'll know the chili paste is going to be made from this right here, which is pasilla, this right here, which is your chipotle, these, which are guajillo, this right here, which is our bowl, and these, which are the ancho chili. Now, so you'll know, folks, there are some differences when it comes to the names of chilies. This chili is a poblano. This chili is an ancho. What is the difference? If I take this and hang it by its stem and just let it dry naturally, it'll change colors. It turns red, then dark red, and then it slowly dries into this. And that then turns it into an ancho. They're an ancho when they're dried. They're a poblano when they're fresh. Now here's a one for you. You'll like this. See this guy? This is your typical jalapeno. We all know the jalapeno. It's a wonderful chili. That's the guy to go with, right? What do you do with this guy? Well, if you smoke it and then you hang it by its stem and dry it, same process as the ancho except for smoking, you get this guy. And that is what we call chipotle. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no such thing. There is no such thing as a chipotle bush. It is a jalapeno that's smoked and dried right there. Now, for this recipe, the fresh ones in the can, which is just a smoked jalapeno that's canned with adobo sauce, no, that's not what this is about. We're going to be using the dry chipotle, the real thing. Right here, these guajillos, I don't have one fresh, but this is the Marisol chili, what it looks like when it's dried, and it is delicious. Okay, so chilies change names when they're dried. Chaclaca, pasilla, ancho, poblano. Very simple. I'm going to be using these 5 to make the chili paste that a sauce will then be made from, and this back here will be cooked with the beef, and it will help flavor that beef. It's all a part of the process. Let's get right into this. Folks, I have just filled my pan with hot water after I broke these roasts out of their packs, and I'm about to put it down in a nice hot oven. So, simple enough. I want to take these chilacas and just split them open like that. Nothing special. Drop them right into the meat and cook it all together. All right, all we need is the flavor from these chilacas, and later if I want to use these in something else, like let's say making a sauce, if I want to make a green sauce or something, I could use these in that. It'd be delicious. All right, and I have learned my lesson on how delicious this little technique is. It produces such good flavored meat. All right, this is simple enough. Cover it, put it in your oven. That's going to be about 275 to 300 degrees. I usually shoot right for about 280, 285. It's a good braising temperature for me. And that's what we're doing here. We're braising, cooking in water, cooking in liquid rather, and at a low temperature. And that equals delicious. Okay, right in that oven. There we go. Give it plenty of time. Okay, we have the meat in the oven. Let's measure this stuff out so we can start making our chili paste, and it takes a while to soak it. Now I've got this set on pounds, so I need to change this to grams. There we go. I'm going to start with this right here, which is my guajillo chili. And on those guajillos, we needed a total of 55 grams. Okay. Whoop, there's 61. 53 is close enough. Okay, there we have it. It's all measured out. Now, what do we do with them next? Let me show you. Now, when it comes time to get these things ready to make a chili paste, there's a couple of things I need. I need a bowl and I need a food mill. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't own a food mill, guess what? It's time to buy a food mill. This is the best way of doing this recipe, and once you've done it with a food mill once, you'll never go back to any other technique. We're going to discuss those techniques in a little bit, but right now, I need to get my chili soaking, okay? And that's the important part here. So, if I just throw these in here and hit them with hot water, they'll eventually get soft. I'm going to help them out a little bit. If you'll take your chilies and simply split them down the middle, kind of lengthwise, right like that, And you don't have to fully split them in half. Just open them up. That way the water gets down inside of them. If the water has a way of getting inside easily, they will hydrate much faster, naturally. And if you do split them, it doesn't hurt a thing. I will say something, this needs to be noted. Some chilies are very hard to cut. Be very careful. Hold your knife the right way, safely. Pinch that blade so that it won't roll on you when you're doing something like this, which is a very leathery, tough chili to cut through. The chipotles are the hardest I know of to cut through, and they can be troublesome. So go ahead and make sure you have a good grip on that knife. And I'll say this, right now there is this smoky chipotle odor in the air in here. It is unbelievable. Once you start slicing open your chipotles, you'll know exactly what I mean. The smell of these chilies is heavenly. There we go. I've got a board full of seedy chaos and a bowl full of chilies of all different kinds. I just need to fill this with hot water. Now folks, you can use hot tap water. You don't have to boil anything. If you want to put boiling water in there, that's fine. It's going to work the same either way. These are going to slow soak. They're just going to sit there, and then 2, maybe 3 hours later, we're going to run it through a food mill. They'll be nice and pulpy at that point. Oh, there they are. We've got those chilies soaking. They're in hot water. Now what I want to do is just give them plenty of time here, and in a little while, about 45 minutes in, I'll rotate all the chili so that this stuff on top gets pushed underneath and has plenty of soaking time. I want everything to get well soaked. So it's just a matter of giving it time, relax, be patient. There's no rush. It's going to take plenty of time for that meat to cook and plenty of time for these to soak. Now folks, this machine right here is what you commonly see used to make sauces of all types, including chili sauces for tamales. It's common that these sauces are made and then people run the puree they make through a strainer like this to catch as much skin as possible and then work with that. That is sort of an okay way of doing it, I guess. It's not my way of doing it. So here's the thing. Let me show you right down here. If I can get this in focus. There we go. You see this little device? This is what I'm going to recommend that you use. Let me pull down a couple of extra strainers here. This little device is referred to as a food mill, or some people call it a French food mill. Regardless, it's a food mill. The idea here is you take food that has been cooked or softened or whatever, and you place it in this large funnel, and at the bottom of this funnel sits one of these. These are the different sieves that go in there. As you notice, they're just different size holes. They go in there with this side up, and the food gets pressed down through these holes by this paddle rotating. It doesn't take long. I can take, let's say, 4 large potatoes, boil them up. With this, I can make mashed potatoes in about 30 to 45 seconds with a food mill. It goes fast. Other things take a little longer. We're going to be using a small sieve today, and it takes a bit of time, but it's not a long time. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you the proper use of one of these with chilies. This will be fun. Now folks, bear with me for a minute while I speak to those folks who have never used a food mill. Ladies and gentlemen, these things are kind of a little bit weird to put together the first time, so let me give you the heads up about it. Almost always these go in a way that looks backward, okay? So it goes in with the dome face up, and that is because the paddle needs to press against it. Now the next thing you need to know is the paddle has a closed side and an open side. Always put the open side toward the side that you're pushing the bale, which is this part here, down last. Okay, so you notice there's a spring here. If I don't do it a certain way, then it'll dent the plate on bottom. So this little peg goes into that center hole. I place the bale on the far side right there, and then it needs to be pushed into place on this side. So I put the opening toward me. There we go. Push down.
and bring it down into place. It's a little bit stiff because of that spring. If you place this right here this way, you'll actually dent to that lower plate, and so you want to avoid doing that. Now everything can just go into this, and as you crank the paddle, it gets forced down through our sieve. You will want something to set your food mill on, so I like to use just a plain pot like this. There we go. Now it's ready to mill everything into that pot, and from there I can use that pot to cook it or do whatever I need to. So it's just a handy way of handling things when it comes to a food mill. Everything goes in there and we crank it out. As we're using our food mill today, I'll be taking my chilies and placing them there, but I'm going to pull the stems off and throw them into a bowl. So have you a waste material bowl handy. And it might be nice to have a towel down because you generally will splatter a lot of water doing this. The first thing I'm going to put into my food mill is going to be my garlic. So I just want to slice it up. Doesn't have to be a pretty job of slicing it either, okay? So just go at it. And the reason I do that is I just get better milling action on stuff like garlic when I slice it first. There's less breaking down for the mill to do at this point. And of course, if you want to go ahead and just crank that in, you can begin giving it a turn. There we go. It's starting to break down and get pushed in there. So that's what it'll do. Hard things like that take a little bit of time, and it's not a problem. It's all going to get worked through it, and it's got plenty of time. But always start with the garlic because it is a little firmer and takes some more time to get worked through. So I want it on the bottom. Alrighty. Our roast has been in there about 4 hours. Oh yeah. Let me see here. Oh yeah, look at that. That meat is just coming apart. Just broke right out of there. This is ready. I can just allow it to sit here and cool down. Ooh, I can't wait to try this. Oh, that's delicious. Perfect for what we're doing. Oh yeah. Just let it cool. Okay, this is as simple as pull off that stem, take your chili and throw it in here. I'll usually take bigger pieces like this, tear them in half and drop them in. And that way they just kind of process a little quicker and easier. If you get some of your seeds in here, don't worry about it. The seeds will be extracted along with the skin. And that's the beautiful thing about a food mill. You don't get any of the skin. Now sometimes you'll see the seeds like this. You can pull out that, but watch out. See this? That skin came out with it. That's my pulp on the inside that I'm looking for. And like I said, if you get some seeds down in this thing, it's going to separate them, so don't lose any sleep over it, okay? So just get your chilies unloaded in there, and once we've got them all in there, we'll start our milling. And I'm also going to, if I remember to, I'm going to start up a timer so you can see how much time it takes to actually do this method and realize that this is pretty quick, especially when you compare it to the blender method. So if you've ever done the blender method and you already know it, you're about to find out something new right here. You know, something that needs to be mentioned also, this right here, these chilies have a very thin skin to them relative to something like the ancho or the pasilla. This one's ancho. It's really thick on the inside. And so those actually contain more meat per gram of weighed chili. So those weights on how much is used is a real important thing. You're going to need those to be quite accurate because the amount of chili paste that comes from 50 grams of one chili can be substantially different than the amount of chili paste from another chili. Guesswork isn't something that works well in this game. Well, I have all of my chilies transferred to my food mill, and I've got a pretty good sized food mill here, so it holds all of it. This is my stems that I had left over. and I have my timer down here. So when I start this, it'll just start counting up. It counts up to 20 minutes and then recycles. But I think this is only going to take about maybe 10 minutes. So we're going to find out together. I've got my timer here. Let's push start. So there it goes, counting up. I'm going to put it right back here. And I'm going to take my food mill and just get busy cranking. Okay. Rotate this a little. And we're going to find out real quick that this doesn't take nearly as long as people think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut off the video here in a second and do a time lapse, because I'm sure you don't want to sit here and watch a food mill being turned for several minutes. Before I do that though, while the counter is still running, down here, already starting to get that paste out the bottom. Perfect, beautiful paste. We're going to go for it. So, here's our time lapse. It's been 2 minutes and 33 seconds. Right now, I've milled this about halfway out. I just want to let you know that sometimes you got to push down a little bit on the chilies, get them off of the sides to get them down into that paddle. But also, occasionally, while you're cranking this, bring your paddle backward once or sometimes twice. And what that does is it'll clear any skins that are pressed against that lower piece, the sieve, and they'll pull it free so that the other skins with their meat can get down there. So 6:01 right now. This is pretty much milled out. There are a bunch of dried out husks, and that's just about it. These have had the meat stripped right off of them, and that is down in the pot below. So let me clean this up. We're going to take a look down there and scrape it free from the food mill, okay? Let's take a look underneath here, since we've already noticed this. Look at that beautiful, beautiful chili paste. And don't worry, this isn't all of it. There's a bunch in the pot, okay? So we're going to look in there in just a moment. Let me scrape off this. If you'll notice, a very high quality product here. There's no skins, no seeds, no fragments, none of that mess at all. It's all right up in this right here, the part we don't want, the part we don't need, and this does a much better job than trying to sieve it out after running it through a blender. Come on folks, let's get real. Let's start using some good cooking techniques and make this a better product with less work. Well, I guess I can stop my timer now, because including the filming, hit this, it was 8 minutes and 56 seconds for all of that, all right? And we have, look at this mammoth amount of a beautiful, beautiful chili paste that is of the very highest quality. Ladies and gentlemen, it just doesn't get better than this. That's the best quality you're going to get. And as a result, it's the best flavor. There's none of the skin in there to bitter this. None. None of the seeds to bitter it. It's just a perfect, smooth chili paste. Now this chili paste, I'm not doing anything else with it tonight. I'm simply going to take this, I'm going to put it in a container, I'm going to refrigerate it, and I'm going to do the same exact thing with my meat and the juices from it. I'm just finishing up with the day's cooking. Get my chilies out of this. Alrighty, now go ahead and get this poured off. The liquid is still quite hot, but the pan is cooled enough to handle. Well, as you can see, we've got it all out of the pan. It's now cooling down. I have to cool these overnight, and that's what I want to do. This will be nice and easy to handle tomorrow. The chilling it will actually make it a little bit firmer and easier to shred. This will also change. It's going to turn white on top, but that's my tallow, and I want to collect all of that tallow to be used in the masa itself. We're going to turn this into the most delicious dough. But also the juices underneath are very important. So we don't throw anything out. Everything gets used. Let's go ahead and get it all under refrigeration, and tomorrow we can start making some beautiful, beautiful tamales. Simple enough for the first day, right? Hey, if you're wondering how much chili paste that made, watch this. You know how big these things are. Folks, that was a lot of chilies. And the amount of sauce it makes, oh wow, it's a lot, trust me. Chili paste is sort of like tomato paste in that it can take in a whole lot of water.
Well, it was pretty simple yesterday, wasn't it? It was braising the meat, getting it cooled down, separating the meat from the juices, put them in the fridge, make a chili paste. We've done all that. So I'll be pulling all of that out in a moment. I've got to shred the meat, and then we're going to make our sauce. And then after making the sauce, we're going to make the batter that goes over the outside. And once we've done that, we can then move on to actually assembling these tamales. It's quite the process, but once you get it down, it's doable, okay? I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not. There's a lot of steps to this. And so it's complicated in some ways, but once you understand those steps, you're going to be off and running making all kinds of tamales. Today, this is the work day. Now, we're looking at making about 40 to 50 tamales, thereabout. So let's get in the kitchen, get busy shredding some meat. Come on. Now folks, when I'm getting ready to make tamales, there's a huge layout on this stuff, and this isn't all of it. Behind me there's more going on. Right now I wanted to show you this though. You need a big pot, but be careful. If your pot is too wide in diameter and you have an electric stove, you can actually cause damage to the wiring and to the socket burner, or excuse me, to the burner socket underneath the top of the stove. So be careful not to get a pot that's too wide in diameter if you have electric. Gas stoves, that heat again can go wide and it can burn your countertops, cutting boards, or whatever is adjacent to that stove. So sometimes it might be smart to pull it out a little bit, or to get things away from it, or center the pot more to the inner part of the stove. A wide pot like this can be unruly, okay? This is actually a fryer basket and a fryer pot, turkey fryer. But I don't really use it for that. I use it more for tamales and making gumbo and all kinds of other stuff. Down in the bottom, I have these. Now these are called pan racks, folks, in the industry. A pan rack is designed to take food and lift it off of a pan for various reasons. You can cool cookies on them. You can raise food off of the bottom of a pan to keep it warm, but without it getting soggy underneath. Okay, that kind of stuff. In this case, I'm stacking two of them to raise my basket and give me more water underneath, allowing me to, well, do my thing for longer periods of time. I can steam for longer without having to refill it. That was one little tip I thought would be very handy for you. Now something else, like I always do, I prep everything first. It's important in this kind of a recipe because there's so many different things for so many different things. So you're going to get busy measuring it all out and then get busy cooking. And that's where I'm at right now. I've got all my notes here. I'm going to let you take a look at the chef's notes so you get some idea of where I'm going and what I'm about to do. I'm going to measure all of this out. Part of it's already done. This up here for the paste is finished, and for the beef and the filling, that's finished. So now we're at the bottom half, second day. Okay, here you go. Now if you decide you want to take a screenshot, do it. This is actually the recipe that we're using. This is the recipe that I've developed out for this that we're doing today. And you know, if I didn't spell something right, don't make fun of me, okay? I've got terrible handwriting and terrible grammar, and so, but this is how I work out recipes sometimes if there's a lot of items. And so take a look at this. This is what you'll be using today, and I'm going to measure it all out right now. Well, folks, there it is. That's our beef that we cooked yesterday. Still in its bowl. It's all chilled down. And if you look at this over here, nice and white, that is all of our drippings right there. I'm going to take this and break the tallow free from the top. I don't know how hard it is yet. It never hurts. Give a little persuasion, right? Right on that edge. And underneath this should be plenty of liquid, maybe some gelatin, depending on the roast that you use. Now if you'll notice how I'm just using gloves, this is also a pretty smart idea. There we go. Now if I get some of that liquid with the tallow, that's not a problem. But this fat right here is an absolute gold mine when it comes to tamales. Whether you're doing pork tamales, chicken tamales, or whatever, if you can get some fat like this, some good solid fat, that is going to make for very good quality tamales. So as a general rule, we go out of our way to harvest everything we can. So if I'm lucky, I can come up with about 1.5 cups of tallow. If not, you can use store-bought tallow, or if you can't find that, you can also just add some shortening. That will work fine also. It's kind of a neutral flavor, really. So the rest of this liquid gets divided up in between making our sauce and hydrating the dough, okay? Now I'm going to start with 4 cups for my dough, and if I have some extra, we'll work it through the meat, and the dough might receive a little more if it's needed. Now the thing of it is it depends on the corn flour. Different brands hydrate different ways, and some of them more so than others. So it can run anywhere from 4 to 6 cups that's needed to hydrate out your dough and make it what it needs to be. Now folks, we're going to have to make our sauce, and that starts with that chili paste that we made yesterday. And we're going to be adding to it some lime juice, salt, and cumin to flavor that out. But also to hydrate it, I'm going to be using plenty of the drippings from the roast, and I still have sitting over there in the bowl. Now for the dough itself, it starts right back here, that's 6 cups that we use right there of masa harina. And I've got my beef broth here, also our tallow. This is beef fat. Our spices, we used black pepper, salt, and cumin to flavor this up, and to give a little fluff to that dough, we added in some baking powder. Oh yeah. Also, don't forget those corn husks, and you need to soak these in hot water, so get that started too. Now folks, I have my chili paste right here. I'm going to go ahead and get all of my other items in here. The salt, the cumin, there we go, my lime juice, there we are. Take a whisk, work that together, and start working in that broth, just a couple of ladles at a time. Now something you need to know about chili paste, just like tomato paste, it just takes in a lot of moisture, okay? So we're in Dallas, and if you hear something roaring, that's the jets from Love Field blasting overhead here. You know, we've got a major airport, which is Dallas International, which flies all over the world, and also Dallas Love Field, which pretty much flies all over the United States. And they're both not too far from me, so.
Put a flame under this, and I want to bring it up to a boil. Then I want to reduce the temperature. We're just going to let it simmer for, in the neighborhood of about 20 minutes. Everything is all done here. All of the spices are there. All of the chilies are there. All of the flavors. Even the flavor of the chilaca chilies is in here now because it came from that right there. It came from our roast drippings. So the beautiful thing is I have my sauce to flavor everything with. I have enough of that to hydrate my dough, and if I want, I have a little bit extra I can use to make the meat a little more moist than it already is. I'm getting ready to make my masa now. I need to go ahead and mix the dry ingredients together first. It's just one of the smart things to do when it comes to baking or doing any kind of a dough. This makes life so much easier, all right? There we go. Just use a whisk. It doesn't take a lot of work. You're just trying to keep yourself from having any large amounts in any one spot. And of course, it's all going to get mixed in the mixer here in just a little bit. So there we go. Everything's all mixed together. Now there's one thing that's not sitting out here that is a part of this dough, and that is 1.5 cups of the chili sauce that we've just made. I'm going to be using that to flavor this with. We start with our lard, creaming it, and then we're going to work in the chili sauce, the masa harina, and our drippings back there to make that beautiful dough. I've just finished cooking off this sauce. That was a 20-minute simmer, and this is looking absolutely beautiful. Now, I need to cool this sauce down because, I'm going to be using it to make my dough. I don't want my sauce melting that tallow that I'm about to cream and make beautiful. So I need to cool this down so it's a little more manageable. The sauce that's left over, I'm going to be using that to flavor the meat with, and that'll be the bulk of it. 1.5 cups of this is used for the dough, the rest is used for the meat. And then if we want to hydrate the meat a little more, we have our drippings back there as well. Okay, let's get started creaming our fat. And this is as simple as put your paddle on there, put it in the mixer, and let it run. Now folks, if you don't have a mixer, it's going to be a little harder for you. You can do it, but if you have one of these, it's a really smart move to use one. Let's get that fat worked up a little bit, and we're going to work a little air into it, and then we're going to use it as our base. Now folks, as you can see, what we are doing here is using virtually everything there is. We use all of the fat. We use the liquids that were under that fat and any gelatin that's in there. We use anything that was left over from that roast. It goes right into what we're doing here. So that's the neat part of all of this, is there's really no waste, and the flavors cross over each other, okay? For instance, the flavor of that broth is in both the dough as well as the meat, as well as the sauce, which also flavors the dough and the meat, and everything is built on these complex flavors that when layered properly have the most remarkable flavor. So that's what we're doing here, and that's kind of all this whole tamale thing. That's what it's about. If you want to build good flavors in a tamale, you have to learn the flavors of those chilies and learn how to combine them in the right quantities. That's what I did. It took me years, and once I got it down, I've got chilies down pat. So the thing of it is this is great tasting tamale, and when you taste it, you're going to be blown away. Okay, let's get back in the kitchen. We've got some more work to do to get these things finished. Come on. Okay, as our fat is creaming, we need to go ahead and get our meat seasoned. And of course, that was the rest of this, right? I just need to get it worked down in there. We'll do about a half at a time. And just mix that into your meat. Keep mixing until you have everything kind of evenly covered. Okay, let's take a look at our fat. Look how that's coming along. It's starting to look nice and fluffy. It's gotten light in its color, kind of white. That's exactly what we're looking for. Let's just keep that up for a little while longer.
I'm going to scrape the bowl down one time and then let it go at it again. Alrighty, I have scraped down my bowl. I'm going to let this have at it one more time. But look at the difference in the quality of the fat. This is real important, and it does change the texture and the way your dough comes out. So go ahead and get this done. Okay, looky there, we have the fat looking gorgeous. It almost looks like whipped cream, doesn't it? So I'm going to take my masa and just let that work its way in, nice and gentle. Add a couple of cups of this, and then add in some of the drippings from our beef. And we're just going to go back and forth with this. All right? Slowly adding one and then the other. And after I get a little over half of these ingredients in there, I'm going to start working in my chilies. That chili sauce. Now I'm going to say this, you've noticed I'm putting things in slowly. I have my mixer running on a slow speed. If you're new to using a mixer, follow what I'm doing, alright? Don't throw things in there fast, don't try to run it fast, and don't rush it, or it will throw everything right back at you. Add in our sauce. This is going to produce a beautiful color, almost a pumpkin color. Okay, we have all of our ingredients in there. I'm going to give that a moment to get well combined, and then we're going to beat it well in just a moment. There we go, it's in the very last step. I went ahead and scraped down that bowl one more time and got it cleaned up really well. And now we're just beating it all together real well, and when that gets smooth and creamy, it's ready to use. Okay, I want to stop this and take a look. Now, the only way to do this is just grab a little with your finger and take a look at it. Now, it's softer than peanut butter, all right? A little firmer than a cake batter, and it sticks real well, okay? That's what we're looking for. That about there. Just perfect. Okay, it's time that we start assembling our tamales. And this is easy enough. Let me pull one of these husks out here. Now, there's a couple of things I want to teach you about this. When you're doing tamales, you're going to have a corn husk. One side is going to be ribbed, okay? It's going to have really tall ribs sticking out. And that side the dough will stick to after it's cooked. So flip it to the other side. Even though the other side feels rough also, if it doesn't have those high ribs, your corn is not going to stick to that as much when it comes time to unroll it, okay? Let's go ahead and put our dough right down on here. Now, it doesn't have to be very thick, okay? So don't go, making some half-inch thick field of dough for your tamales. 1/8 of an inch is more than enough. In fact, it's just almost perfect, all right? Let's take our meat. And I have this beautiful shredded meat filled with our sauce. Now, do not make wimpy tamales, okay? Get a tamale that has enough meat in there to actually make a difference, to seem like you have a filling, okay? You don't want this little pencil lead thin piece of meat running through the middle of a whole bunch of dough. That's just awful. Now, in this case, I've got too much dough on there. I'm going to seal this edge down to the dough on the other side, as you see there. If you ever run into this where it's like that, you can simply remove that excess and still use it. All right? Finish rolling up your tamale. When you're at the end here, this loose end, fold the tail away from it, okay? So I want to pinch it up to squeeze that dough in place. Fold that over. The end here, if you want this to be sealed, just go ahead and seal it shut, just like that. You can have the meat showing, but it looks a little better if you kind of close it off. There we go. Stand this vertical in the steamer like this, and it's ready to be cooked up at that point.
As you can see, we have our tamales getting stacked up in here, and this is what I'm talking about. You just stand them on the fold with the opened end facing up, and in a little bit I'm going to pour some hot water in here. In fact, actually right now, let's go ahead and do that. I boiled this water earlier, and this is just to kind of give it a jump start. And we leave that open spot right in the middle so we can pour water into. Otherwise I have to pour it right down the side of the pan between this steamer and the pan itself. So there we go. We'll put a high flame underneath this. There we go. Bring it up to that nice steaming point, and we're going to give these about an hour and a half to steam off, okay? Now folks, for the first day, what we're going to be using and what I'm doing, I'm going to start with cooking the beef, and I'm using these right here. So I started with 8 pounds of beef chuck, and I'm using 1 pound of chilaca chilies split open and braised with it. You're going to want to fill that pan about halfway. Now the amounts that we need on our chilies, that's going to be 50 grams on this pasilla chili. On our chipotles, we need 80 grams of chipotle chilies. This is the guajillo, that's Guajillo. The guajillo chili, you need 55 grams. This one right here, the ancho, we need 70 grams of ancho. And on this fiery hot little thing, which is the arbol, you want 4 to 5 grams. Folks, if you don't like your tamales really spicy, leave this one out. They're going to be spicy enough with the rest of this, but that arbol really kicks it up. Now folks, the quantity of everything that we use today, let's start over here. The corn husks, that's 1 pound of corn husks. Make sure you get those soaked in water so they're good and soft. You're going to need 6 cups of masa harina, and that's corn flour, ladies and gentlemen. Corn meal will not substitute. Masa harina, the real thing. This, you're going to be using 4 cups plus maybe a little extra of the broth to hydrate this out. 1.5 cups of beef tallow. If you want to substitute some other fats for that, you can do so. Like if you wanted to use, let's say, shortening, that would work fine added to this. Our black pepper, that is 1 tablespoon. 1 tablespoon of cumin, 1 tablespoon of salt, and 1 tablespoon of baking powder. Now if you're using an instant masa harina, you don't have to use that baking powder, but if you are using it and you want to still add this, you can do that. It just gives a little extra fluff to the dough. Doesn't hurt a thing. For our sauce, we're adding in 1/4 cup of lime juice, 3 teaspoons of salt, and 1 tablespoon of cumin, plus the drippings as needed to get this to the consistency of about a spaghetti sauce. Our tamales have cooled enough that we can touch now, and that's when they start getting nice and firm and they take on a good shape. Now, there we have it. That, ladies and gentlemen, beautiful tamale right there. That's what we're looking for. Now see how those are just slipping out of that husk. And what that is that's the tallow, that fat that we used, that's helping it to release. There we go. Absolutely, totally beautiful. That's what I'm looking for when I'm looking for tamales, right there. It's been a lot of cooking, and it yielded some beautiful, beautiful tamales. Folks, nothing quite like a beef tamale. The flavor's there. Oh man, is it ever. That's a good tamale. Thank you very much for watching this. I appreciate that. And I hope you enjoy your tamales. Folks, if you would, take a look around. Take a look at my channel. Take a look at my website, which is S.A.Trotter.com. That's S.A.Trotter.com.
Very cool place. You can find the items that are going to be for sale from Texas Cooking Today. They'll be there. Also, there's art for sale there, as well as my services. Folks, thank you very much for watching Texas Cooking Today. Enjoy your beef tamales, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.